An update now on the health of superstar singer Celine Dion. 1 year after she announced she has a rare neurological disorder, her sister says the symptoms are getting worse.
These spasms affect every aspect of my daily life.
That was Dion last year when she went public with her diagnosis of stiff person's syndrome. It causes the body to attack its own nerve cells. In an interview, her older sister Claudette says Celine has since lost control over many of her muscle groups. The disorder affects 1 in a million people. It is progressive and incurable. Despite that diagnosis, Claudette Dion says her sister's goal is to perform again. For more on stiff person syndrome, we connect with Dr. Karine Garneau. She is a neurologist at the Centre Hospitalier de l'Université de Montréal. And Dr. Garneau, appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
So when we reported on this back when Celine Dion first announced her condition, can you remind us, though, what exactly is stiff person syndrome?
So it is a condition in which an antibody, which is normally helpful because directed against microorganism, is becoming unhelpful by attacking its own system. And this antibody is attacking an interneuron, a neuron which normally helps the muscle relax. And because this function of relaxing is no longer taking place, the muscle contracts without control, and they can have spasm or prolonged stiffness of the muscle.
And so we're hearing from her older sister today that it's gotten worse, that she basically has no control over her muscles right now. Is this typical of how this condition progresses?
It's hard to give a typical evolution for such a rare diseases because at one point in time in the world, there are so little people diagnosed with it. But generally speaking, it's a condition that we can control with medication. The first line being muscle relaxant to avoid that spontaneous contraction of the muscle. Then the next line would be to treat those antibodies, to try to remove them from the body in order to have them not attack the body anymore. So we find that we consider this condition a chronic condition, but a treatable condition. Only rare instances will the person be unable to control their disease with what we have for medication.
So I know you're not treating us, Celine, but what do you make of this? If it's treatable, why do you think it's getting worse for her?
Well, it's impossible to really comment on her situation. It's impossible to know what type exactly of antibody that she has associated with this condition, what she has tried so far. And let's not forget that also the muscle, the more they contract spontaneously, the more stiffness happens, the less you can move, the more deconditioned you become. So also there might be other elements taking place in her limitation to perform her daily activities.
She says it affects all aspects of her life, or that's what she said a year ago. I mean, what's it like? Is it painful? It must be just awful to be kind of feeling this way all the time.
Well, you can imagine that if you're lifting weights and your muscle contract in order to lift weight, but then you're not lifting weight and your muscle are contracting that same way that it would do to lift a weight, in the long run, that's quite uncomfortable. It can come obviously with pain. Sometimes it's not in the forefront, sometimes it is. And obviously, because we use muscle in every single thing that we do during a day, that can bring a limitation in every single activity if the muscle are difficult to control.
So as we mentioned, it's been a bit more than a year since Celine Dion went public about this. Given her high profile, does this in some way help in research for this disease?
Well, obviously, draw a lot of attention to this disease. And I must say, since I gave interview last year, I've received many patients wondering if they had this syndrome, and I must reassure the public that most people having muscle stiffness and muscle spasm, they end up not having stiff person syndrome. The fact that she drew attention to such a neurological disorder is good because we get to speak about those rare conditions, but I don't think it's having any direct impact for other patients at this point because it's been too early to see any impact.
Do we know a cause? Like, what causes someone to have this?
Like for many other autoimmune disorder, we don't know what triggers it in the first place. We know there are probably many different factors that play a role, certain people being more susceptible to have autoimmune disorder than others, but why a certain person will develop it at a certain point in time remains unknown.
Her sister says her goal, Celine Dion's goal, is to perform again, that she wants to sing again, and millions of people would love to see that too. What do you think the chances are of that?
Oh, I can't comment on this because I don't know her situation. The most important is that she wants to do it again. You know, it's all her life that she dedicated to singing, so I can imagine that it's an important goal to her. At the same time, I think she has the right to remain, private and to take that time to heal herself.
Dr. Garneau, appreciate you providing us with some insight into this. Thank you very much.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Dr. Karine Garneau in Montreal.